Hello, hello, hello. What's up, everybody? I just decided to start early. Why not, right? So, how's everybody doing? Mr. Reality Bloom. It's a little crazy. I need one of those little, kits with the, oils and whatnots to put in here to make it pretty. What's up, Paranormal Stephanie? Probably shouldn't start reading until it's officially at least 9. Yeah, just a little bit early. Just a little bit early, therefore. But thanks to Johnny again, I do got some stories to read tonight. He went and found some on Reddit for me. I said hello to 4 earlier when I was in the chat, but hello, 4 warnings. Hello, Stacy. Sorry, my foot itched. 4 warnings don't want me to pull her into the center of attention. She doesn't want me to say, everybody, you should definitely check out her channel and sub her if you have not done that already, because she is a very talented narrator. She doesn't want me to say stuff like that. She doesn't want me to say you should also definitely check out Mr. Reality's channel because he's also very talented, and Nihongo Johnny because he's not a narrator, but he has really cool content. As a matter of fact, everybody should just check out everyone's channel. No, I was simply explaining that you would not want me to do that. That's all I was doing. I wasn't saying you were those things or that people should go do those things. They should, but I wasn't saying that. All right. So right before you got here, Johnny, I was thanking Johnny for getting me a bunch of stories. Let's see if Haley comes. She should be here soon if she's going to be. Oh, yeah. Johnny was telling me I should do some ASMR. Just kind of whisper one of the stories. What's up, Silas? Thanks for coming, man. Glad you made it. Hey there, Drag. What up, Brad? How you doing, man? It's unfortunate that you can't stay, but thanks for stopping in, man. All right, just for Johnny's sake, I will ASMR this first story. It's pretty short, so that should be fine. It made you tear up. What? Okay, everybody. This first story's name is Carter. It was written by somebody named Jalapeno Bridger. When I was in middle and high school, my best friend's name was Carter. We did everything together. We played at my house nearly every day after school and on the weekends. And had sleepovers all the time. In fact, he once told me that he was at my house more than his own. His dad, the only person in his family who cared about him, had died after his ex-wife's new boyfriend shot him out of jealousy. Oh, shit. Carter was only 10 at the time. He moved there with his neglectful mom, the person partially responsible for his father's death, who never really cared where he was, or if he ever even came home. I couldn't blame him for wanting to be somewhere else all the time. Carter was always there for me, and I was there for him. We would stay up late whenever he slept over, just talk about everything everything that was going on with us. We would talk about our crushes and eventually our girlfriends once we got into high school. We would talk about our grades, our future plans. We would talk about our personal lives. Sometimes we would just speculate the meaning of everything. And when my dad was killed in an accident, we talked about that too. Carter was the only thing keeping my through that time. What? I told him everything about how I felt, and I knew that whatever he told me how sorry he was that I had lost my father, he wasn't just saying it. He knew the pain of it all. The crippling misery you feel of losing a parent that you cared so much for, and who cared so much for you. If it hadn't been for Carter, I don't think I would have made it through that time. I told him so many times how badly I wanted to just end everything, but he was the only one who could always talk me out of it. When my mom found out about my suicidal thoughts, she set me up to see a therapist, but it became quickly clear to her that it wasn't helpful. Carter saved my life, and after 11th grade, I never saw him again. He said he was going to visit his aunt and uncle over the summer. He just never came back. I don't know if they just took him in for the last year of high school or if he somehow died, but I never heard from him again. At one point, I went to his mother's house asking if she knew where he had gone, but drugs had destroyed her, both mentally and physically, to the point that she didn't even seem to remember having a son.
It's almost over. Forewarnings, don't worry.
A few days ago, I went home from college to visit my family. When I was there, I found a box of old things from school. From drawings in elementary school to yearbooks from high school. For nostalgia's sake, I flipped through my 9th grade yearbook and decided to find Carter, but I couldn't find him anywhere. I looked through another one from 10th grade. He was nowhere to be seen. I went downstairs and asked my mom if she knew where any pictures of Carter and I were. Her face got really pale, and she said quietly and seriously, "How do you know about Carter?" "What do you mean, how do I know about Carter? He was my best friend when I was younger," I replied. She shook her head and said, "No, Carter was your twin brother. He died from complications during birth right after you were born. I never told you about him because I thought it might be too hard for you."
No, Johnny wanted me to whisper a story, ASMR a story. And apparently I'm giving Mr. Reality a boner. You're welcome, Mr. Reality. And hi, Haley. What's up, Jack? Yes, a croner, not a boner. Croner. I don't know why croner is spelled crowner. I don't know. Because it make you feel like a king. No, peasant. Well, forewarnings, you always have a croner. Let's fight. Sword fight. Croner. No, you guys can fight after the live stream, or at least keep the live stream running. And don't forget to like, subscribe if you haven't, which I'm not sure if I've seen anyone new in here, but I was reading, so. And share. Please share. And yeah. I'll get on to the next story. This one I'll just read. I'll read it like Mr. Reality's impersonation of me. "I'm a night security guard. I just watched surveillance footage of my own death." By Mr. Outlaw. As the title states, I'm an after-hours security guard for a medium-sized downtown office building, not in a terribly dangerous city. Let me put this out. Let me start over normal. As the title states, I'm an after-hours security guard in a medium-sized downtown office building, not in a terribly dangerous city, just average. Glamorous, I know. On top of that, I'm either losing my mind or in the midst of some really strange shit. A few nights ago, my boss gave me some security tapes that he wanted me to look over. Apparently, the guard that I rotated shifts had just quit, but it was a bit unconventional. He didn't give anyone any prior notice. It appears as if he'd simply left in the middle of his last shift, and we hadn't been able to contact him since. On the same night, there had been a break in. Seemingly nothing stolen or damaged, just the front glass door, which was now shattered. Now, I knew about the break in beforehand, but not about the guard. It was weird, but this is kind of a shitty job, so it wasn't anywhere near shocking. My boss wanted me to try to identify who had done it, and said that the cops are lazy and it would take weeks for them to even look at it. His quote, not mine. Sure, it was an annoying request, but it's on me for not finishing college. It was a pretty quiet night when I got around to it. My boss had told me to look over it on my own time, but that wasn't happening. At around 2 a.m., I finally began watching. It took a lot of fast forwarding until I finally got to something. We were right. The old security guard, Chris, literally got up and left at exactly 2:17 a.m. that night. Even weirder was that he left all this shit behind. He just walked away. Okay, I thought, shit happens, whatever. I kept watching until the break-in at 3 a.m. Some medium-built dude dressed in a stereotypical burglar outfit, ski mask included, took a baseball bat and smashed through the front glass door. I'm pretty sure that Chris never even locked it behind him when he left, so that was a waste. Also, our alarm didn't go off because we didn't have one. Cost cuts wherever you can, eh? It's a wonder that I still work here, given the fact that some guy could literally break in, stab me to death, and the cops wouldn't even know about it till the morning. But that's beside the current point. The intruder walked in and entered the stairwell, so I tracked him. A bit of a complicated process, but I finally found him on the 6th floor. That's when he took out what looked like a wire. I felt my skin crawl a bit upon seeing that. There's only a few reasons why a person would carry wires around in their pockets, and one of them stands out as being particularly unsavory. He started making his way down the corridor in a manner that I can only describe as methodical, purposeful even, as if whoever he was stalking was not yet aware of his presence. Moments later, the door to a room up ahead of him flung open. He reacted quickly, ducking into an adjacent hallway as somebody else came out. Let me tell you that I was not prepared for who it was. It was me, a near replica. I say near because the guy's face looked borderline emaciated, while his clothes barely hung to his limbs. I was more of a muscular build myself, but I'd been skinny before. I knew what I looked like, and that was it. My copy was wearing what looked like the same kind of white, heavy-duty jacket, almost looked like something a soldier would wear in an Arctic climate. On top of that, there was a large streak of red covering his chest. Probably doesn't take a detective to figure out what it was, given the circumstances. He also appeared to be exhausted, with one bony hand holding the wall while he was doubled over, exhaling like hell. Eventually, he started moving, stumbling towards the intersecting hallways where the mystery man was presumably waiting for him, hands clasped around the wire. I found myself instinctively reaching for my phone to call 911 when I realized that this was not happening in real time. But even if it was, how was I supposed to describe the situation? As my copy passed by, the mystery man pounced on him, but it seemed he was anticipating it. My copy, that is. A vicious struggle ensued. Despite my copy's frail appearance, he still managed to hold the upper hand against the mystery man for a while. Let me tell you, I sure as hell can't fight like that. The combination of the military-grade jacket and the hand-to-hand training that this guy clearly practiced yielded a few possible avenues of explanation. but I was going to need a lot more info in order to really understand what was going on here. What up, Dustin? Happy birthday. What's up, April? Sin? Thanks for coming. As my Nope, I already read that. Despite being pounded on for a good few minutes, the mystery man eventually landed a lucky uppercut, staggering my copy. He quickly took the opportunity, rushing in and forcing the wire around his neck until he went limp. That struggle ended. What followed was interesting. He dragged the body back to the room that my copy had come out of and shut the door behind him. I fast forwarded up until today. Nobody else came out and nobody went in. There was nothing that I could do for the rest of my shift but sit there, absolutely floored. The next day, my boss asked me what I had seen. I told him a fabricated version of what I'd seen, of what had happened. That some dipshit high school kids en masse broke the door for fun. Nothing we can do about it beyond installing an actual security system. He said he'd look into it. Sure he will. Now I consider just forcing myself to forget about it. That would have yielded more sanity, but some things are too bizarre to overlook. During my next shift, I decided to take a look at the 6th floor myself. I assumed that it'd just be a bunch of cubicles up there, but I was obviously interested in one specific room. Once up there, I started walking around. It almost felt surreal being in the place where something so strange had just happened. In fact, it got me questioning whether or not I just lost my mind for a few minutes, and if anything on that tape was even real. But I got my answer when I saw the stain on the carpet. It was barely noticeable, but I knew what I was looking for. A speck of blood from the struggle. I wasn't sure whether it was from my copy or the mystery man. I kept going down the corridor, trying to locate the room that my copy had come out of. From the footage, it was pretty evident that it had to be the 4th door on the right. I tried the handle, locked, and then I tried something that would most certainly cost me my job, but I rationalized it by realizing that if anyone was ever going to watch the tapes, it was once again going to be me. I kicked the door down and headed in. It was a conference room, but one that looked to be under renovation. There were dried paint cans, an unfinished carpet job, and drywall covering the walls, but nothing unusual, yet there was bound to be something here. For the first few hours that I stalked the room, I couldn't find anything noteworthy. The other way out of the room was a stairwell exit, so it was reasonable to assume that he simply escaped through there. I was about to give up when I stumbled upon something hidden under one of the desks. A device of sorts, maybe. Couldn't really tell you. Despite being rather small, it was incredibly heavy. A cylindrical shaped metallic item. It was smooth all around, save for a few buttons that did nothing when I pressed them, and a dried, bloody thumbprint. Wonder who that belonged to. I stood there, trying to decipher the particulars of the item for an indistinguishable amount of time, but an abrupt noise jarred me back to attentiveness. Sorry. Footsteps in the hallway, footsteps getting closer. I was not doing my job. A few ideas regarding the identity of the intruder ran through my head. Obviously, none of them were good, and one of them was really bad. In any case, I made a beeline for the stairwell and took the metal thing with me. I didn't go back to the building until around 5:40 a.m., 20 minutes before the end of my shift. To my surprise, the new glass door that we installed was still intact, but I definitely knew that I heard footsteps out in the hallway. Maybe they found another way in. Maybe I'm just going insane. I'm still holding the device in my hand. What am I going to do with it? No fucking idea. But I know what I'm doing next. Time to pay a visit to the old security guard, Chris, to have some kind of answer here. Oh, and there's an updated version here. All right, so I guess I should read this too here in a minute. I think it's a time traveling device or something. What do you guys think? Everybody like and share and sub and if you want to support my channel, check the links below. Or the links in the description. All right, I'm going to get on this next part here. I'm a security guard, and I just watched footage of my own death. Update. Mr. Outlaw. I never knew Chris all that well. He was a work friend at best, but I knew where he lived, and that was all the information that I needed. I went over to his place and knocked. No response at first. Didn't really know what I was expecting, in all honesty, but I stayed put in my pursuit for answers, continuously pounding on his door. I mean, wasn't it kind of peculiar that he just conveniently quit on the night that the break-in took place? I must have stood outside of his door for about 20 minutes. Logic would dictate that he simply wasn't home and that I was beginning to believe that. Until I heard some noise on the other side. Sounded like somebody accidentally knocking over a pair of shoes. This motherfucker was silently staring at me through the peephole. "Chris, open the damn door," I said in a borderline threatening tone. Still no explicit response. He wasn't doing a great job of concealing the fact that he clearly knew something about what had happened. And then he slipped a piece of paper under my door? What? Under the door. In messily scribbled writing, this is what it read. "Can't tell you anything, he'll know." Okay, I thought to myself, that doesn't sound good. I tried knocking for a few more minutes before his neighbors started poking their heads out. I decided to leave before somebody called the cops on me, but I wasn't planning on dropping this. I ran the facts through my head as I walked back home. He'll know. I didn't want to admit it, but those words greatly concerned me. Who the hell is he? I stewed on these thoughts as I made my way up to my apartment, but when I got there, I realized that I may have fucked up big time. My lock was busted and my door was half open. Call me a pussy, but I dialed 911 immediately. The cops came over in a reasonable amount of time and began to investigate. All in all, the only thing that was taken was $50 cash that I kept in a drawer. That was what they put in the official report, after all. But that wasn't all to the story. There was something else that was missing. The device. In retrospect, the fact that I took it in the first place was a dumbass move on my part. No shit, it was going to have some kind of tracking system in it. I didn't even know what the hell it was. This posed a conundrum for me, of course. It was presumably the mystery man that had broken in. He knows where I live. He also tried murdering somebody who looked just like me. Safe to say, I was probably in danger. The cops said that they would station a vehicle outside my apartment complex in order to keep an eye on me for the night. I wasn't really sure how effective that was going to be, but it couldn't hurt, I suppose. But I still didn't sleep. That night, there was a knock on my door at around 2 a.m. I nearly shit my pants, but when I heard, "Police, open up," coming from the hall, I looked. But then I heard, okay. I looked through the peephole, and it was indeed the two cops that had been assigned to wait outside of my building. One of them chuckled when I opened the door. "How the hell did you do it?" he said to me. "How'd I do what?" I asked in confusion. He simply scoffed and then abruptly cuffed me. Although tired as hell, I still relentlessly questioned them about what the fuck they actually thought I did. It was only until I waited for half an hour in an interrogation room when a detective came in and gave me an answer. Apparently, I had entered the building that I worked in, knocked the new night guard unconscious, and broken into one of the upper floor rooms. They also showed me the proof, security footage of exactly what they described happening. A person in a stereotypical burglar outfit waltzed in just as the new guard was locking the door for the night. They got into a fight, and the mystery man won, but not before the guard managed to rip his ski mask off. The split seconds that displayed his exposed face yielded all the evidence that they could ever need. It was me, again. The footage then tracked him all the way up to the 6th floor where he entered a room. Guess which one that was? He was also carrying a bag with him the whole time. It really wasn't a mystery regarding what was in it either. The last recorded footage caught him running out of a fire exit. I couldn't even begin to attempt to answer the detective's questions. I know I didn't do it. Well, you know what I mean. I just kept trying to analyze what kind of situation this put me in. If the mystery man that I'd first seen was also me, then that means there had been at least two copies of me out there, and they were trying to kill each other. Then the situation with Chris made more sense. Maybe one of my copies had threatened him. The answer has to be that device. Hello? The detective barked at me. You listening to me, Mr. Case? No, I wasn't. He sighed. Look, we're just trying to figure things out. What was the plan here? I reciprocated the sigh. I don't fucking know. That entire conversation understandably produced zero conclusions. The detective stepped out and left me alone with my thoughts once again, but no matter how I framed this situation, it was always inexplicable, beyond my comprehension. I sat in a shocked silence for about 15 more minutes before the rabbit hole was dug deeper. I started hearing commotion out in the hallway and then gunshots. The detective suddenly rushed back into the room, looking confused as hell once he saw me. How the fuck? Is all he managed to get out. What's going on? I asked him. He shook his head before coming over and pulling me up. All the while, I was still in cuffs. We gotta get out of here. He started directing me towards the back exit while some kind of hell was going on in the background. At this point, gunshots were going off left and right. We were just about out the door when I saw a bullet go through his skull. I made it out just before him, so I didn't suffer the same fate, but I saw who had done it. It was my copy, staring blankly at me and standing at the other end of the hall. He fired off a few more shots at me, but they were stopped by the door. Fueled by perplexed adrenaline, I simply started running. I wasn't really sure where I was going, so I just ducked into a nearby forested area. Once there, I hid myself in some bushes. I stayed there until sunrise, and luckily, my copy never found me. I heard police sirens all night. There was bound to be a lot of explaining to do if they ever caught me. However, I'm sure they'll just be just as confused as I am once they view the security tapes inside the police station. Once I convinced myself that the coast was clear, I got up and tried figuring out where I was. It was an excruciating process, trying not to be seen by anybody, given that I still had handcuffs on, but I eventually managed to find my way. I went to somebody who I knew could help me outside of my situation, my friend Jack. Now, Jack was a drug dealer. And before you judge me for being friends with a drug dealer, just let me preface it by saying that he only sold weed and cocaine, and he never killed anyone before. I'm pretty sure of that. It was about a 3-hour walk from the city to his farmhouse, but I eventually made it, finally getting the damn cuffs off in the process. He asked questions, of course, questions that I couldn't answer. Right after shoveling some food down my throat and smoking a joint to calm me down, I went on the internet and looked for any new coverage about the incident. I can't estimate how many cops were killed, but it seemed like there was a lot. This should have been a big story, but there was nothing. At first, I found a few detailing some vague incident near the location of the police station, but after a few refreshes, they disappeared. Somebody was trying to hide this. I can't speculate what's really going on here, but maybe they know something that I don't. It's probably better for me that my face isn't plastered across every TV screen and every local diner, but this also begs even more questions. I'll try to explain the situation to Jack later. Maybe he'll believe me. Maybe he'll think I'm a fucking loon. What up, little bit of this and a little bit of that? But as for right now, I don't see a ton of options. My copy is probably searching for me right now. Well, that was the end of that one. I don't know if that'll get picked up again later or what. Not sure. I've read the Channel Zero thing. I haven't seen any live action stuff regarding it, but I did read I think I might have read it during a Murder Monday, actually. Can't remember. But I remember reading the channel. I think I read 2 separate stories about Channel Zero, actually. Seems like it. Seems like I read 2 about that. So what's everybody up to? A volcano reminds you of the 90s, Johnny? How come YouTube won't let you on your computer? What's up with that? Huh. Might be an issue with your Google account. Or no, because you'd have the same issue on your phone. You would think. Yeah, that's weird. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you, Johnny. I'm sorry. Well, I won't ever get tired of your face either, Haley. Yeah, this is my detective pipe. No, it's my detective pipe, Mr. Reality. Or did you mean your fluffy face? Smoking out of pipes, drinking out of cups. Who put that chair there? Who put that floor there, huh? Not me. Not this guy. No way. That fucking Mr. Balloon Hands over there? Next story. Not me. Not never. Oh, this one sounds pleasant. Someone has made an annual tradition to amputate a part of my body. Written by Eugene Grology? Eugene Grology? I don't know. Eugene Grology? Something like that. I actually copy and paste it just to make sure I give this character credit. Because that is the right thing to do. That person. I know this might sound hard to believe, but it's exactly as the title suggests. No more, no less. I think the most sensible thing to do is to start from the beginning, so I'll do just that. Back in 2012, I went to Las Vegas for a couple of weeks to blow off some steam, along with my severance package after I was laid off. It wasn't an absurd amount of money, but it was enough to have fun for a few days, which was all I wanted. I was staying at a casino hotel, and one morning I woke up with what I initially assumed was just another hangover. I felt nauseous and slightly dazed, and it took a couple of minutes for my legs and arms to regain their normal levels of sensation. It's almost as if my body had slept for a really long time. It didn't take long before I realized I was missing a finger. My left index finger, to be more precise. I started freaking out and panicking as my vision gradually turned to black, threatening to make me pass out at any given second. I didn't lose consciousness, but I still struggled as I looked all over the room for my missing finger. Something I was quick to notice was that there wasn't any blood at all, none that I could see at least. Of course, it could have just been my drunken, drugged up, and panicked self that couldn't see or think straight, but the investigation confirmed it later on. No traces of blood were found, and the weapon/object responsible for the deed was also missing. Oh, that's good, Johnny. I'm glad you were able to figure it out. It appeared to be a clean cut, and the wound had somehow been cauterized. To me, it looked like the finger had simply fallen off. I know this makes no sense at all, but that was my train of thought. I mean, if you woke up one day missing a finger, you'd certainly look around first, right? So that's what I did. I mean, it's part of you, part of your body, something that's just not supposed to disappear like that. I eventually called for help, and to say it was a total shit show doesn't even come close. So many cops, casino security, and nosy patrons trying to understand what the hell was going on. I didn't know what to say or even what to think. I was missing a fucking finger and I had no idea what had happened. The cops didn't seem to care all that much. One of them implied something along the lines of me borrowing money from a loan shark or the mob or something like that. Another one said, "It's just a finger. You should be grateful." Really, it's just a finger that you lost. You should be grateful that it was just a finger. I was disgusted beyond words, but before I got to defend myself from those accusations, everyone seemed to accept it as the truth. When in Vegas, someone said. I still find a ton of paperwork. I still filled a ton of paperwork, but it was worthless in the end. No clues came up, and I could tell it was pointless to bother them about it. It was fucking Vegas after all, right? What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, and my finger sure as hell stayed there for all I know. I threatened to sue the hotel, and the guys in charge ended up giving me some hush money. I guess having your patrons lose body parts without a good enough reason would be bad for business. Who would have thought? I think this goes without saying, but the whole ordeal and its aftermath fucking sucked. Of course, things are much different now in hindsight, with me not knowing at the time that this would become a regular thing. But even then, it was enough to nearly ruin my life. I know it was just one finger, but how do you come to terms with something like that? It's one thing to be involved in a freak accident or even a fight. But not only did I not know how I had lost it, I also didn't know why or even who would want to do something like that to me. How do you explain that to friends and family? How do you even begin to wrap your head around something like that? Imagine waking up every single morning and being reminded almost instantly that a part of your body has gone missing. If you think you could have easily moved past it, then good for you. You're a better, stronger person than I ever could have hoped to be. But in my case, it nearly destroyed me. I didn't leave my apartment for months. I couldn't think or function normally because the thought of my lost finger was always on my mind. I mean, it used to be attached to me and then it disappeared overnight, so it was only natural to be reminded of its absence constantly. Whenever I reached to grab something, whenever I used or looked at my hands, it would mess me up for the rest of the day. I hadn't become fully used to it yet, but thanks to therapy, I was on the verge of making peace with it and finally moving on with my life. And then I lost something else exactly 1 year later. All right, you have a good one. Thanks for stopping in. 2013. I woke up with a very familiar sensation, one that had plagued my nightmares as well as my sleep paralysis incidents for the past year. I felt sick and numb, and my whole body struggled to move and wake up. Sensation slowly came back to me, followed by pain. I screamed for my life, as I had done 100 times right before waking up in a puddle of sweat. But it was no nightmare. My right ear had gone missing in the exact same circumstances as my finger. No blood, no tools, nothing left behind. It didn't take long for me to realize that both incidents had happened on the exact same day of the exact same month. There was a pattern. There was, in all likelihood, a reason for this madness, and someone had to be behind it, and yet absolutely nothing came from it once again. Absolutely nothing. That's what the cops had to work with. And I was left exactly the same as the year before, except now I was missing an ear as well. The cops suspected my then girlfriend at the time. She was a nurse. I think you can guess under the circumstances we first met, but everything checked out. She had been working all night, and dozens of hospital staff accounted for, as did video surveillance. Oh, there's a buffering issue tonight, huh? Sorry. Well, she provided some emotional support at first, and she bailed after a few days. I couldn't blame her. Not only was there still no logical explanation for who, how, or why, but someone had managed to make their way into our home, hack a piece of me, and leave without seemingly breaking in or even leaving any evidence behind. That would just about scare anyone into moving away to another state, maybe even another country, which I actually attempted to do at some point, but more on that in a bit. And not only that, but this wasn't the first time that it had happened. And now all signs pointed to this becoming an annual event. And it sure did. Ah, 2014. Probably the hardest year I had to live through, knowing that someone was actively trying to ruin my life by slowly amputating my body piece by piece. I invested a lot in security and would change the locks every other week, but I was never satisfied. It wasn't enough. I I barely slept, knowing that each passing day brought me closer to that terrible date. But what if it didn't? What if they decided to come that very night, or the next, maybe next week, or 2 months later? They had done they had done with me as they pleased twice on the exact same day of the year, and the message was clear. They could do what they wanted with me whenever they wanted, and get away with it. It probably would have been smart just to move to a different place, but my anxiety dictated most of my decisions. I nearly didn't talk to anyone that whole year, and on top, my seclusion didn't do me any good, although it provided a bare bones source of comfort. I lived in constant fear for the first 2/3 of 2014, though it would get a lot worse as the inevitable date drew closer, but the opposite happened. I became angrier, with a newfound bloodlust building up inside of me. Someone was doing this to me, and if they wanted to keep on doing it, they would have to come for me again. Only this time I'd be ready. I'd be expecting them. They couldn't possibly get away a third time, and more importantly, I just couldn't afford to lose anything else. I couldn't allow it, as I feared my mind and spirit would simply break apart. I got myself a gun through some gangbangers and made sure I'd know how to use it when the time came. I was ready to take a life, and considering all that had happened to me, I knew I could probably get away with it. In fact, if anyone had knocked on my door that day, I would have likely unloaded a full clip through the door without thinking twice. I just needed an excuse, the smallest hint of a threat, anything. I know I took some pills to make sure I'd remain awake and aware through the night, but my recollection of that evening just fizzles past a certain point. I thought I'd taken enough steps to guarantee that I'd make it to the next day in one piece, or rather without losing any more pieces, but I was wrong. That year, they took my right hand, but that's not all they did. The weapon I had bought for my protection, it was left on my desk completely disassembled, with every single part and component neatly, perfectly arranged like it was something straight out of a fucking manual. They had left a message, perhaps even a warning of things to come, the meaning of which I'm sure I don't have to explain to you at this stage. All I knew then is that this was far from over. Living as a shut-in had done me no good, so I had to radically change my approach if I hoped to change anything. I spent most of 2015 traveling the country, staying at motels and all kinds of sketchy places. I never knew where I was heading next whenever I got into a cab or hitched a ride, ditched my phone, and made sure I never made reservations of any kind. That sort of thing, not leaving a trail behind and just getting off the grid, or at least trying to. Figured that figured that might be enough to lose whoever was after me, even though I had no idea what kind of resources they had available to them. For a while, I think I really felt confident about it. I believed I could survive the year without losing any more pieces of me. But as the dreaded date loomed closer, doubts and anxiety found a way to cripple me all over again. In doing so, it gave way for all that mental and physical fatigue to set in, accumulated for nearly a whole year's worth of traveling around. What if everything I had done wasn't enough? What if it had been all pointless to begin with? There was less than a week. There was less than a week left at that point, and that's when I decided to do something very stupid that probably undid all the work I'd done so far. I bought a laptop, and I used the dark web to hire someone to protect me. They took the money, but they never showed up. I lost my tongue that year. I didn't do much of anything in 2016. I moved into a new apartment every couple of months or so, but more out of necessity than anything else. There was no point for me to move around as I had done the year before, considering how it turned out in the end. Instead, I tried my best to live a normal life as much as possible, despite everything I had lost, and with my speech now severely impaired as well. I kept mostly to myself. On the outside, I appeared to be coping and living with my disabilities the best I could, but I hadn't given up. Every day I kept thinking of a way to stop something that, for all intents and purposes, seemed to be unavoidable no matter what I did. I kept everything related to the issue bottled up inside my head. That was the only place I was sure they couldn't look in to see what I was planning. Even though I spent most of the year thinking of a way to keep it from happening again, I want to make it clear that I didn't have a grand scheme going on. I wish I had, but as you would surely understand, I wasn't exactly in the best of places. Losing body part after body part every single year will do that to you. All of this just to say that the best thing I came up with was getting on the longest flight available to that particular day. The destination didn't matter to me. I figured there was no way someone could get a piece of me while I was up in the air and with nowhere to run off to. It was impossible, no matter how many scenarios I tried to recreate in my mind. And if I could spend enough hours up in the air, maybe I could make it. Maybe for once I could go through 1 year without losing a part of me, and maybe the whole thing would finally stop. I didn't even make it inside the plane. Airport security found me passed out in the bathroom, missing my left foot. I gave up entirely after that. How could I not? When I asked for help, they took my tongue. When I tried to fly away, they took my foot, as if to say I wasn't going anywhere. I didn't see the point to try and fight it any further. And even if I wanted to pursue some form of resistance, what could I ever attempt to achieve by myself? What could I ever hope to accomplish in the condition I was in, which only worsened year after year? Nothing. There was nothing left for me but to accept it. Accept the fact that it was going to happen again, that I couldn't do anything about it. So last year, I didn't do anything extraordinary. I went to the movie theater in the afternoon, had dinner at the fanciest restaurant I could find without a reservation, and then went straight home. I didn't stay up pointing a gun at the door. I didn't bother with any last minute thinking that I knew wouldn't get me anywhere. I just went to bed and fell asleep, knowing that I'd wake up the following morning less of a man than I was the day before. I didn't want to do anything except leaving a handwritten note by my bedside. Why was all it said. Why was all I needed to know. I figured since I had accepted and stopped trying to fight it, that they would at least try to humor my request and just tell me why they were doing this to me. Why me? An answer was all I wanted, and it wasn't much to ask for considering everything that had been taken from me already. I wasn't really sure what to expect, even if they were to leave me an answer, since nothing could possibly justify what they had been doing to me. I never did anything to anyone that could warrant this kind of vengeance. No crazy people in my life or insane ex-girlfriends, none at all. And if this had been a case of mistaken identity or misdirected revenge, I could never get any of it back. What's done is done, but I still had to know. I needed I needed something to go on, no matter how fucking insane or deluded it might be. I needed to know the reason behind this slow process that was progressively erasing my existence from the world. I woke up missing an eye, and and all I got was the following response left on the same sheet of paper. Why not? That brings us to now. I know that there might have been some other things I could have done, other actions I could have taken. But when they left my gun completely disassembled, or even when they answered my note, I could have asked the cops to look for fingerprints or some kind of evidence, but did I think something would come of it? No. They wouldn't be so methodical and relentless unless they had no reason to believe that they would be caught. I know it's dumb to think like this, but I knew in my gut that it was pointless to dwell on. I understand that I likely committed some very dumb mistakes early on, but please try and see it from my perspective. I was alone through most of it, and in this last 6 years, every time it happened again, I started functioning less and less like a normal person. I had no one to ask for help, and even if I did, my heightened paranoia would have made me believe otherwise. I lived in constant fear and apprehension, afraid of whoever is responsible for this. Afraid that whoever is responsible for this could literally be any person I come across if I was to step outside. Please understand that things went down the only way they could because of the bad place I was put into, both physically as well as mentally. And please understand that I'm not here to ask for your help. As I've said, I've already made my peace with it. I don't mean to trouble any of you to try to come up with a scheme or plan to make this stop once and for all. If you've read everything up until now, that's more than enough, and I don't wish to take any more of your time. Thank you, truly. With this, I just want someone to know that I existed. I just want someone to remember that I, too, was someone at some point. I was complete. I was a person. I could share my name, even my mangled face, but even what's left of it can be taken if they wanted to. But not these words. You can't take this away from me. You won't be able to erase me from people's memories. I know this isn't much, and I know I might not live on for long in this capacity, but for now it's more than enough. I know that whoever's been collecting my body parts over the years will see this. I know you'll be reading this. Perhaps you'll even leave comments of sorts, wishing me luck or even offering your help and insight. I know you will. There's only 2 days left until our next date. Maybe you'll finally show yourself to me. Maybe you'll put me out of my misery once and for all. I considered doing it myself plenty of times, but since you've been through all this trouble already, I figured I might as well wait for you to wrap it up. I wouldn't want to ruin your fun, and I, too, get some form of twisted satisfaction out of it, knowing that you will always have to come back for more. You're not done yet, are you? And to tell you the truth, I'm actually quite excited for once. This is pretty much the only thing I have left to look forward to at this point. And who knows? I might also have a surprise in store for you. Or maybe I don't. You'll see soon. Well, there goes that one. It's kind of an odd one. Thank you. So what's up, everybody? Let's see. This one's short. I'll read this one real quick. I'm a therapist and my patient has severe OCD. Every time he misses a ritual, something terrible actually happens. By Dr. Harper. Love one, love two. As he spoke, Phil held up his hand to his heart and raised one finger, then two. Then he bowed his head and whispered one last sentence. Sorry for bothering you. In my notebook, I finished sketching that pointy S symbol that we all draw in high school. I never actually write anything down, but it gives the patients the comforting idea that I'm in the process of figuring it out. How often do you perform this ritual, Phil? I asked. He looked up. Every 5 minutes. He had a messy beard and a weathered face, and appeared much older than he probably was. 5 minutes? I repeated, trying not to sound too surprised. That was unusually frequent, even for a patient with severe OCD. Do you feel any relief after the ritual's complete? He shook his head. Never. What are you afraid? What are you afraid will happen if you don't perform the ritual? He closed his eyes and shook his head. Phil, you can tell me, I said encouragingly. That's what I'm here for. He took a deep breath. The the man with two knives. Fear of death or murder was one of the most common manifestations of OCD, but of course I didn't want to minimize his fear, which was still very real to him. That sounds frightening, Phil, I said. Can you tell me more about this man? He swallowed. If I miss a ritual, he'll come in the middle of the night and he. It's okay, I said gently. I don't want to upset you. I turned to his wife, who was anxiously massaging his knee with her hand. And how has this impacted you? I said. It must be difficult seeing your husband suffer this way. You must worry every day, especially when he's at work or traveling. He never leaves the house, she said quietly. This is the first time he's been out in 3 years. He's been on disability the whole time. He's so terrified, and my new assistant, Noah, opened the door. Noah, I'm in the middle of a session. Sorry, it's the school, he blushed. They said it's urgent. They want to talk about Emma's trial. I shook my head and apologized. I'll be right back. As I walked out of the office, Noah stood in the doorway and stared at Phil and Anne. Apparently, he learned nothing from orientation, but I didn't have time to deal with him right now. I stepped out and took the call. The school wanted me to testify in Emma's favor, which I was already planning to do. I got the sense that they were more worried I would try to blame the school as revenge for firing me. But revenge is petty, especially at the cost of a young person's future. I finished the call and returned to my office. I'm so sorry for the interruptions, I said as I took my seat. Now, there's good news and there's bad news here. The bad news is you certainly seem to be suffering from a severe case of obsessive compulsive disorder. The good news is that you came for help, and OCD is very treatable. Phil leaned forward. You can stop him? Yes, I said confidently. I'm not a huge fan of medication, but I think antidepressants could help take the edge off while we begin a regimen of mindfulness and talk therapy. In a few months, those rituals will be a thing of the past. My whole team is here to help you. I didn't want to refer him out to my colleagues too quickly, but this was a pretty classic case of OCD, and I felt that my resources might be better spent on patients with more unusual issues. Phil shook his head. No. I'm sorry? No, I can't take medication. I can't stop the rituals. Of course you can, I said. That's why we're here. No, he said again. Otherwise, he'll do it again. I was becoming a bit frustrated by this point. Phil, that's the whole reason. Show us, Phil said. Show us, Phil said to his wife. She winced and shook her head slightly. Please, Phil pleaded, show us. Anne closed her eyes and lifted up her shirt. Her torso was covered in at least a dozen stab wounds. Before I even had a chance to react, Phil had his hand up to his heart. Love one, love two. Jesus Christ, had it already been 5 minutes? Sorry for bothering you. Oh, there's a part two. All right, this one's not as short as I thought. Huh? What are you talking about? You're talking about the big beard, the weathered face, you know. I poked my head out of the office door. No, what's my afternoon look like? He took out the iPad. 2 new patients after this one, he said. Don Halverson? Noah, we've been over this, I said impatiently. I can't remember names. I remember problems. Read from column B, please. Oh, right, he said, scanning the screen. Guy who intentionally transmitted HIV to 8 people? And the other one? Homeless kid who escaped a call. As the words came out of his mouth, he raised an eyebrow. Geez, Doc. Welcome to the wonderful world of pro bono work, Noah. I gave him a quick smile. Please move them to next week. I'm going to need a little extra time with my current patients. They both sounded fascinating, but the homeless kid was probably hallucinating from drugs, and the HIV guy was court ordered, so he wouldn't be hurting more people anytime soon. Right now, Phil needed my full attention. I returned to my office and saw Phil and Nan embracing each other. They must have been the most exhausted looking couple that I've ever worked with. "Anne," I began gently, "now that I've seen evidence of bodily harm, I have to report this to the police. Do you understand?" "No!" they both shouted at the same time. "It's not really a matter of choice." "You can't," Anne said. "That's the whole reason we're here. If we go to the police, he'll kill Phil." I tilted my head. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because of Eleanor," Phil answered for her. "Eleanor?" "Our daughter," Phil said Phil quietly. "She had the same condition as me." "OCD?" "It's not OCD," he protested. "Eleanor went to the police last month, and the man with the two knives," Anne held his hand. He killed her a week after the police detail left our house," Phil stammered. "The angriest I've ever seen him. Stabbed her 8 times and dragged her into the woods." What the hell had I gotten myself into here? "You're drunk and proud of it. Nice." "Well, let's take a step back here," I said. "Phil, do you have any recollection of when this ritual began?" 3 years ago," he said. "We took Eleanor on a road trip to Disney, and all we remember is waking up and hearing him tell Eleanor and I that we have to do the ritual every day from 4 a.m. to 11 p.m., or he would hurt our family. There were 3 rules: no cops, no hospitals, and no skipping sleep. We thought it was some kind of sick joke at first, so we didn't do the rituals. But then he showed up that night." "Do you have any idea what the ritual means?" I asked. "Love 1, love 2, any of that?" He nodded. "She's in love," he pointed to Anne. "Her sister is, wait, she's love 1," he pointed to Anne. "Her sister's love 2. If I miss either of them, they get punished that night." "Wait, her sister gets stabbed too?" "Yes," Anne whispered. "She lives with us. She has two more scars than me." "How many do you have?" I asked. 14. Phil bowed his head in shame, but by my calculations, he was nothing short of a hero. 12 rituals every hour, 19 hours per day, 365 days per year for 3 years. That's 249,660 rituals, and he's only missed it 14 times. That's a 99.995% success rate. What about sorry for bothering you?" I asked. "What does that part mean?" He shook his head. "I have no idea." We sat there in silence for a while, and I just stared at my notebook in disbelief. Then Phil spoke again. "You have to help us," he begged. "We've tried everything, but he's always watching. I don't think he's human. I think he might be a demon or a ghost." I did my best to conceal a harumph. Yeah, I don't believe in that stuff. To me, those are code words for overactive am- amygdala, which was unsurprisingly another aspect of OCD. And I like to think every mystery has a practical explanation set here on planet Earth. "So, your daughter, Eleanor, she had to do the same ritual or the same thing would happen?" They nodded. There was no point in pretending to write in my notebook anymore. I had no idea what was happening. Father, mother, sister, daughter. Father and daughter have to perform 5-minute rituals, otherwise mother and sister get stabbed by an omniscient stalker. "See you, Mr. Bloom. Thanks for hanging out." I don't know what was worse, the fact that they refused to involve the police because of this omniscient stalker, or the fact that I was about to go along with it. "Phil, I need to be honest with you," I said. Given the severity of your OCD, I have suspicions that you may also be suffering from a comorbid case of DID. DID? Did? Dissociative identity disorder, I said. It's possible that you could be the man with the two knives and his victim. My God, will you stop diagnosing people with mental disorders and listen to us? Well, that was supposed to be the wife. Anne spoke up angrily. We have surveillance videos. We wired the whole house. It's not Phil. It's some sort of evil spirit. You have videos? I asked curiously. May I view them? Hopefully, we could put an end to this supernatural talk once and for all. She nodded and took out her phone. This is from last year, she said, handing the phone to me. Phil accidentally said love you instead of love too. I watched the footage. 4 panels at once in the master bedroom, Phil and Anne made their way into bed. In the guest room, Anne's sister read a book in bed before shutting off the lights. In Eleanor's room, a young teen girl typed away on her laptop before finally drifting off to sleep. The front entrance to the house showed no signs of life. Then I just waited. Phil did his ritual a few times on the couch while I continued watching, but nothing happened for a long time. I wasn't sure if I was missing something, and that's when I saw it. A man in full body armor marched into the sister's bedroom. He had 2 butcher knives, one in each hand. I'm normally not a sucker for horror, but I'll admit I jumped. I wanted to call out and warn her, and then, with surgical precision, he lifted one knife and drove it into her stomach. She lurched out of bed and screamed, and just like that, the man with the 2 knives walked out of frame. The others bolted out of bed and ran for a room, but I was busy watching the front door. No one ever came out. Jesus Christ, that video changed everything. I've been wrong plenty of times, but I've never been this wrong. Could Phil even be diagnosed with OCD if his fears were completely rational? I handed the phone back to Anne and said, This is terrifying. I'm sorry for... Love 1, love 2. Phil began his ritual again. Sorry for bothering you. For some reason, the last sentence really made me uncomfortable. Something about the way Phil whispered it in that lower voice. It didn't even sound like him. He pressed a button on his Apple Watch and looked back up to us. Is that how you keep track of the 5-minute intervals? He nodded. It vibrates 30 seconds before, then a loud alarm at 20 seconds, and at 10 seconds it calls everyone. I shook my head. What kind of life was this? I'm so sorry for doubting you, I said. This must be hell for you and your family. We had the videos of Eleanor, too, said Anne through tears. The one where he took her away from us. I bit my lip and accepted the phone. For the next few minutes, I watched their family perform their nighttime routine again. And then later in the night, the man appeared again. This time, he walked into Eleanor's room and covered her mouth. She squirmed violently, but no one in the house could hear her. And then he began stabbing her repeatedly, almost as if he was punishing her. Eventually, her body went limp, and he dragged her body downstairs and out the front door. I closed the phone and shoved it back to Anne, as if some kind of curse that could be passed along to me. What had gotten into me? You've searched the house for him, right? I asked, because he doesn't seem to enter or exit the house. Of course we have, said Phil. I'm telling you, he's not human. I cleared my throat. I fully understand your conclusions, but I'm a student of science, I said. Would it be okay if we tried my way, a scientific method? Just a few controlled experiments, and if that doesn't work, you're free to explore a medium or a ghost hunter. Experiments? Phil asked nervously. I'd like to access your security feed, I said. I think he has access too, hence why he's able to watch your every ritual. So I want to be in the contained room with you while we try various combinations of your ritual. If this man doesn't know whether or not you perform the ritual, he always knows, Phil protested. He'll hurt them. Anne squeezed his hand tighter. We'll do it. What? Please, Phil, she said. We have to try something. We can't live like this anymore. He took a deep breath and nodded. So what do you need us to do? Phil, I'd like you to stay with me in this office for the next couple of days. I'll get some blankets for the couch, I said. And I need you and your sister to act like everything is normal at home, even in Phil's absence. If you suspect anything is off, please call me. They both nodded apprehensively. After answering a few more of their questions, I escorted Anne from my office. Noah, can you stay late these next few nights? I'll pay you overtime. I needed someone to watch the door and make sure no one was listening. Sure thing, Dr. Harpy. I stared at him. Harper, I said. Harpy is a rude, foul-tempered woman. He went pink. Oh, right. Experiment 1. Control group. Do the ritual. First, I had to set a baseline. What happened if Phil did the ritual successfully every 5 minutes in my office with only me watching and no one else? So that's what we did for the rest of the afternoon and evening. I just sat across from Phil and watched him perform his ritual every 5 minutes. He did it with such a sense of duty and purpose. It was somehow both disturbing and inspiring to witness. Finally, we reached 11 p.m., and I turned to the security camera feed on my laptop. Anne and her sister made their way into bed, and for the rest of the night, nothing happened. A lucky guess for the man with 2 knives. Tomorrow, we'll make things more interesting. Experiment 2, experimental group, forget love 1. Today, I need you to mess up love 1. Phil looked at me miserably. Please. He won't hurt Anne, I said encouragingly. There's no possible way he'll know you missed, let alone who you missed. It's just the two of us in this room. He took a deep breath and nodded. But for the next 8 rituals, he continued to say everything correctly. Phil, I promise everyone is going to be okay, I said. Don't you want to save Anne from this hell? He looked up to me and closed his eyes. Oh, okay. We waited another 5 minutes for his Apple Watch to light up, and then he leaned forward in anticipation. Love 3, love 2. Sorry for bothering you. He fell back into the couch and burst into tears. Oh, God, he said. I've doomed her again. I rushed over and comforted him. You're helping her, I said, so you don't have to live like this anymore. He continued the ritual correctly for the rest of the day and evening. Then I turned back to the security feed and watched Anne and her sister perform their nighttime routine. Phil refused to watch. They fell asleep and nothing happened. I knew it. The man wasn't omniscient. He was just watching their security feed. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something change in Anne's video. It was him. Defo. How the hell? I lunged for my phone and called Anne's cell phone. She didn't answer. Fuck, I whispered. What's happening? Oh, what's happening? Phil asked. Call Anne's sister. I said, do it now. I watched the video as the man walked robotically towards Anne in bed. He's there. I heard Phil speak into his phone. He's going after Anne. He ended the call without another word. Why did you hang up? There's no point, Phil said, defeated. He can't be stopped. Heart racing, I turned back to the video feed as the man walked closer. Wake up, Anne, I started to scream and bite my lips. Get out of there. And then I watched as the man drove the knife into Anne's thigh. What the fuck? I kicked my trash can bin across the room. How did he know? We keep trying to tell you. He's not human, said Phil. I shook my head and stormed out of the room. Noah, I barked. When I took that phone call with the school yesterday, did anyone come into our office? No, Doc. He shook his head, eyes wide. I'd never seen him like this. He'd never seen me like this before. How did he know? I repeated under my breath as I turned back towards my office. Then Noah spoke up again. Maybe he really is a demon. I spun around. Are you listening to our sessions? He went white. Definitely. Only a little. Noah. I rubbed my fingers into my eyes. You need to go home. Come on, he said. I'm experienced with psychology stuff. You took Psych 101 in college, I said, aspirated. I don't have time for this. What if he's really a demon, though? Said Noah. Shouldn't you? He's not a demon, I snapped, turning back to my office. Someone is listening to us. And that's when it hit me like a ton of bricks. Oh my God. I hurried back into the office and approached Phil. Phil, I'm so sorry for failing you, I said. I need to get us some dinner. I'll be right back. Before he could respond, I held my index fingers up to his lips, and I reached down for his Apple Watch. I unfastened the metal strap and carefully removed it from his wrist, placing it on the table without making a sound. I took my finger from his lips and motioned for him to follow me out of the office. He did. What's going on? He whispered when we got into the lobby. I think someone is listening through your watch, I said quietly. You wear it wherever you go, right? Yes, he nodded. All day, every day. Oh, Noah nodded gravely from behind his desk. I gave him a light smack on the head with my notebook. Not a demon. But who would be listening? Asked Phil. I don't know, I said. But we've bought ourselves some time. He thinks you're alone in my office, and you don't need to perform your ritual until morning, which gives us about 3 hours to figure out who's doing this to you. But how? Asked Phil. How can we figure this out? I spent all this time playing detective. I've forgotten to do my actual job, I said. Phil, I need to know about your past. What do you mean? He asked. Before the ritual, I said. Who were you? What was your life like? Any enemies, bitter exes, bad business deals? Or loans from the mafia? Noah said seriously. I glared at him. I don't remember. Phil shook his head. I can't remember anything from before the Disney trip. I woke up in a daze and it felt like we'd been drugged. You don't remember anything about your life before that? He shook his head. I thought for a moment and then said, Have you ever been hypnotized? He raised his eyebrows. Like where magicians make you do funny stuff? No, that's stage hypnosis, I said. In therapy, we use it to calm the patient and access deeper state of mind. You still have full control of your mind and body. Some call it pseudoscience, but I've seen several patients uncover forgotten memories with it. I'll try anything. What you mean? I can't drink no more, though. Yeah, I'm still here. I still got some stories to read. Okay. Great, I said. This isn't exactly an ideal environment, but we don't have the luxury of time, so we'll just have to make do. Noah, can you dim the lights? He eagerly jumped out of his seat and turned down the lights. Then he sat back down at his desk. I looked at him and pointed to the building's front door. Out. Oh, come on, let me stay, he said. Won't cause any trouble. Noah. It's fine, Phil spoke up softly. I don't mind. Noah gave him a huge smile. I rolled my eyes and turned back to Phil. We sat down in the waiting room chairs and I began the hypnotic induction. You don't do it with a swinging necklace like in the movies. Normally I'd approach it with a gradual relaxation method, but we only had a few hours before Phil had to start his rituals again. So the rapid Elman method was probably our best bet. I want you to close your eyes and then imagine your eyes are too tired to stay open, I said quietly, like when you've had a long few days with no sleep and your head finally hits a pillow. Finally, you can let go and catch up on your rest. Your dreams get started very quickly. The harder you try to open your eyes, the harder they stay shut. He closed his eyes and we continued down this path for a few minutes. Now, when I drop your left hand into your lap, you will go 10 times deeper. I gently lifted his hand and then lowered it slowly and placed it on his leg. He rocked slightly from side to side. We did the same with his right hand and then got started on counting clouds. As each cloud blows away with the breeze, you fall into a deeper state, deeper and deeper every time. After a few more minutes, I felt confident that Phil had entered a hypnotic state. I was lucky a lot of people don't respond to it because their logical mind is too busy trying to prove it wrong. I'm one of those people. Now, Phil, I spoke in a calming voice, what can you tell me about your childhood? He took a relaxing breath. I don't remember. That's okay, I said. What about your trip to Disney with your daughter Eleanor? His face broke into a sad smile. I loved Eleanor. She sounded like a very special person, I said. What was her favorite ride at Disney? He swayed a bit. I don't remember. This was unusual for hypnosis. Usually patients were more receptive to questions. What about your ritual? I asked. Do you have any idea what sorry for bothering you means? He shook his head slowly. I don't know. Could you try performing the ritual for us now, Phil? He nodded. Love one, love two. Sorry for bothering you. His voice got deep and raspy with the last sentence. Can you do it again? Love one, love two. Sorry for bothering you. Just the last part now. Sorry for bothering you. He repeated in the same low voice. Again, sorry for bothering you. Again, sorry for bothering you, he said. But can you spare some change for a vet and his little girl? He held his hand out to me. I stared at it for a moment. Vet and his little girl, spare change. Did Phil used to be a homeless? Did Phil used to be homeless or something? And then my heart started racing. Holy shit. Noah, I whispered. That new patient I asked you to push back yesterday? He frowned. The dude that gave people HIV? No, I said. That homeless kid, the one who claimed to escape from a cult? What was the patient's name? He took out his iPad and started swiping hurriedly. Homeless kid who escaped the cult, he said. I stared at him incredulously. The name, Noah. I said column A. He swiped one more time, and then his face froze, illuminated by the light of the iPad. Whoa. For God's sake, what's the name? Eleanor, he whispered. Her name is Eleanor. Alrighty, there goes that one. Yeah, it was a pretty interesting one. I'll read this one next. Thank you. This is my last cigarette. That sucks. So this next story, is called Marriage Troubles? Try the Love Simulator, only $19.99. What are you confused about, Haley? Haley, what are you confused about? Thank you, Jack. put this smokerette out. That's right, I called it a smokerette. Marriage Troubles, Try the Love Simulator, only $19.99. Written by Blair Daniels. You're so fucking self-righteous. I'm just doing what I think is best. For you or for us? I asked. You know what? I wish I'd married Dan instead. Of course, I didn't mean it. Exes are always better in retrospect, eroded to perfection by the sands of time. Eleanor had escaped the cult, and the cult was filling them, I suppose. But it was too late. Tommy slammed the door in my face. I plopped down on the couch, my heart pounding. After staring at the wall forever, I pulled out my computer and typed into the search bar, "What do you do if you married the wrong man?" Hoping for a self-help article or maybe even some sort of WikiHow on divorce. I got something else instead. Marriage Troubles? Try the Love Simulator, only $19.99. Curious, I clicked. I half expected a porn site, which honestly would be fine by me, but it wasn't. A page loaded up, hot pink Times New Roman on a black background, like some sort of 90s GeoCities monstrosity. Welcome to the Love Simulator. Worried you'll marry the wrong person? Or that you already did? Find out below. Below were rows. Your name, your love's name, your Facebook page, your love's Facebook page. Click here to upload photos, videos, and sound clips. Remember, the more information you get us, the more accurate the simulation. It's probably nonsense, but I needed a distraction anyway. Maybe I'd get a good laugh. My cursor hovered over the submit button. Click. The scene that loaded reminded me of The Sims, with crappier graphics. A 3D living room, blocky armchair with ugly brocade textures, a vase with some bubbly things that only mildly resembled flowers. A man sat on the sofa. His face was Dan's, but it was weirdly stretched and warped. His Facebook profile picture was a texture map haphazardly to the cylindrical face. "Hi, Casey," an automated, stilted voice said from the speakers. "I love you." Despite myself, I laughed. Hi, I love you too." The words felt weird on my lips, spoken to someone other than Tommy, even if it was just a computer program. "How are you doing?" Not so good, Dan, to be honest." "I'm sorry," the voice said. Oh, this is kind of neat. Must have some sort of speaking recognition and AI, like those old AOL chatbots. "Is it about the fight?" The fight?" I said into the microphone. "I'm sorry I fought with you." The pixelated, still eyes from Dan's profile picture stared out at me. "I love you, Casey." "I love you too." Also, it started tilting its head. "I am not self-righteous like Tommy." My blood ran cold. What? "I would never slam the door in your face." My cursor hovered over the X. Click, click. The window didn't close. "Don't try to leave." He leaned in closer with his deformed head. "You're with me now, Casey." I slammed the laptop shut. For a second, I thought I'd been successful. "Oh, you were distracted, huh?" For a second, I thought I'd been successful, but then his voice came through the speakers, muffled through the plastic. "Do you remember how we met?" I nodded, scrunched into the corner of the couch. You stopped me on campus. I dropped my phone and you gave it back." "Did you ever realize you didn't actually drop your phone?" Uh, what do you mean?" "I stole it." A buzzing silence filled the room. My ears rang. "And did you ever realize I wasn't even a student?" A rustling sound from the speakers. "I worked at the auto body shop next to campus." I grabbed the laptop and threw it to the floor. Bits of glass and plastic exploded, covering the rug. His voice continued, distorted and low. "I wasn't Even a student watched you for days. Pretty little co-ed. Rap, rap, rap. 3 knocks on the front door. I bolted up, stepped into the foyer. Tommy, is that you? No reply. I'm so sorry for what I said. I'm so sorry. A pretty. A pretty? Then 5 words came through the heavy oak door. Get out of the simulation. Click. The sound of a key fitted into the lock. Creak. I shut my eyes and screamed. A hand grabbed my wrist, yanked me into the porch. Casey! Casey! I opened my eyes. I wasn't standing on the porch. I was sitting in a bed in a dim room. The damp smell of must flooded over me. A dim beeping sound came from somewhere in the shadows. Casey! I turned to see a figure in the shadows, sitting at a computer. I'm back? What are you talking about? I pulled myself up further. My forehead suddenly itched. I reached my hand up to scratch, and my fingers brushed wires instead of skin. Yeah, I just pulled you out of the simulation. The voice was gravelly, low, familiar. No. The man stood up and walked towards me, his large nose, short dark hair illuminated in the light. Dan? He smiled. See? I knew it wouldn't take long. You're a grass is greener kind of girl. You said you wish you'd married Tommy, so I gave you that. And then, only 2 days into the simulation, you told him you wish you'd married me. He broke into laughter. Tommy is self-righteous asshole, isn't he? My blood ran cold. The memories flooded back in pieces. The wedding to Dan, the fight, only a few weeks after. You're a liar and a creep. I wish I'd married Tommy. What happened after that? I don't remember. I dragged you down here and started the simulation. He frowned. I'm surprised you don't remember that. You were thrashing and yelling quite a bit. My heart dropped. Then I leapt out of bed, tore the wires from my forehead, and ran up the stairs. I heard his yells behind me, his thundering footsteps. I yanked open the door. Then I disappeared into the snowy night. What? That's how it ended, huh? Apparently that's how that one ended. She disappeared. Or he, she, whatever. Disappeared into the snowy night. Because they married Dan. That's what they get for marrying Dan instead of Tommy, I tell you what. You want to be a moderate crow? Alrighty. This next one is called My Daughter is Dying by polonium poisoning. That was weird. Tina was a good baby ever since she was born. Other mothers watched us with nervous, longing faces. She was so quiet and peaceful. She was a good sleeper. I didn't mind being put in the crib most nights. I could make it only waking up to feed her once. The dream of every mother and every babysitter. She didn't mind being around other people and never cried for me when I wasn't around. Potty training her went smoothly. Tina was the most easygoing baby, toddler, and little girl I'd ever met. I would add that she's also super smart and beautiful, but every mother thinks their children are. I think it's our brain deceiving us, so we don't be like, ew, 9 months and a lot of stitches for that? I'd better throw it in the garbage can. That was pretty fucking morbid. You want a blue wrench? There's very few people that got a blue wrench. I think my only blue wrench people are Four Warnings, Haley, and Devil Jack. What up, Drac? And I know them quite well. Well, I would trade all of it to have a healthier daughter. I wouldn't mind one bit if she was a hysterical child, covered in snot and unable to poop by herself. It started suddenly as silent tragedies usually do. I was at work when her kindergarten teacher called me. She talked in a calm, almost singing song tone. The only one grown woman who spent the whole day around little kids. No, the only one grow what? The only one grow women who spend the whole day around little kids know. Whew. Hi, Mrs. Davis. How are you doing? After a pause for exchanging pleasantries, the teacher spoke again. Look, Tina is being really good as usual, but today she's a bit under the weather. We checked and she has a fever. Could you come pick her up now? Aw, that sucks your kids are sick, man. I left in a hurry. When I got there, Tina could barely stand. I carried her in my arms to the car, unsure if I should take her to the hospital or just put her into bed with an antipyretic. Tina never got sick before. I sighed, wishing I had some help, wishing her father hadn't left. Wish. All right, I'm not going to read this one. Or no, I am going to read this one. I'm just going to read it like it's written. I sighed, wishing I had some help, wishing her father hasn't left. I was so in love with him. My mother lived in another town, but I decided to call her for advice. She told me to let Tina rest for today and to take her to hospital tomorrow if she didn't get better. Pretty obvious if you're not feeling overwhelmed and tired. As I drove, I started thinking about Ben. He was handsome and a sweet talker, 10 years older than me. I thought we were madly in love. When he asked me to have a child with him, I was silly enough to think it was the biggest commitment a couple can make. I felt honored and blessed until he had a job offer on Japan and decided for me that I wouldn't be happy there. I assured Ben I would be happy anywhere with him. He said I couldn't leave my job, which I didn't like that much, or my mother, who I didn't see often anyway, and in just 1 week he was gone forever. What's up, April? When Tina and I got home, I made us some tea, prepared a bath, and put my daughter in her bed. I had a bad feeling about this, but I dismissed it as classic mother paranoia. I slept by Tina's side in a tiny bed that night. I couldn't wait until morning to take her to the hospital. She woke up sweaty, shivering, with an ugly cough. Her lungs made a weird static noise. Time for some serious antibiotics, I said to calm myself. As we got there, Tina had to be immediately intubated. She could barely breathe by herself. She was so small and fragile between the machines that kept her alive. In the next few days, things just got worse. Her hair was rapidly falling, hundreds of strands at a time. Her skin was so dry and sunken in the bone that she looked 1,000 years old. Her eyes got milky and blind. Her voice was all raspy and her breath smelled awfully. The doctor had no clue what was going on. We called specialists in infectiology from other states, other countries even. No one knew a thing. And a huge effort was made just to keep her alive the way she was, with no improving. It seems like it's getting worse as it goes on. I still had to work, so my mother came to stay with Tina at the hospital. I spent all my days crying in my desk, and researching rare diseases. I posted a plea in my Facebook wall. If you know what my daughter has, please tell me. I'm desperate, I wrote, and described all her symptoms. A woman I didn't know or had in my friends list reached out to me. Her name was Jennifer, and we had no mutual friends. Samara, I can't even imagine what you're going through. I need to talk to you about your daughter and her father, and it's really important. Can you please meet me at coffee shop near subway station? I immediately answered yes, and we met in the same day. I had no time to think this was some scam. My guess was that she was some old friend of Ben and knew he had a disease. I was full of hope. Jennifer was in her middle 30s. a little older than me. She was tall, pretty, and looked friendly. She was already there when I arrived and bought me a cappuccino. Look, Samara, you don't have to believe me. I know it's crazy, but I know what your daughter has. Will you give me a chance and listen to me? I will listen to anything. I'm desperate. I'm Ben's ex-wife. I know. You probably hate me and think I want to harm your daughter, but I'm fucking serious. That man's a psychopath. Did he leave you when you got pregnant? Yes and no. I don't think you're a bad person. Well, I had to put a fucking gun to his head to get this confession. The son of a bitch made a deal with the devil. He wanted to be attractive for longer and promised his firstborn in exchange. What? I screamed. We were the only clients there. Oh, we were the only clients there. The young barista quickly looked at me and then probably remembered people scream all the time in front of him and didn't mind much. Jennifer gave me some much needed time to let that sink in. So, you guys didn't have a kid? I asked too casually. Oh, I had a kid. Ben thought my son was his, but joke's on him. He wasn't. He started to get desperate. He begged me to have another child with him. He said he would take care of everything and wouldn't even miss it. And I wouldn't even miss it. It. A son or daughter of mine. What a monster, I mumbled. I obviously refused. I know it wasn't right to cheat on him and get pregnant with someone else's baby, but I had a gut feeling something was wrong. Before I got pregnant, he was too intense about it, and I knew he always hated kids. I knew something shady was going on, but couldn't imagine how big it was. I thought it was some inheritance matter, you know? I'm really glad I did it, but Ben was running out of time, so she hesitated for a long time, bit her lip, and looked at me with eyes full of pity. Well, he started looking for someone else to bear his child. Now the devil's claiming your daughter. We talked for a long time, and I'd say we became good friends. After a month, Tina got so much better and was out of the hospital in no time. She's back to her old full self now. There's a tiny detail I'm forgetting to tell you. I took a trip to Osaka with my new bestie, and we had a little talk with the man who tried to ruin our lives. Maybe we were a little too blunt, if you know what I mean. He was a real burst of emotions and brains. My life is only getting better and better. I think Satan was pleased that I sent something that belonged to him. I heard he's really warm when it comes to welcoming his deadbeat debtors. Wow. Yeah, Johnny's boyfriend is nothing but floating hands so that he can choke Johnny properly. Isn't that right, Johnny? All right, I got one more story and then we'll call it a night. Well, yeah, I mean, if he's nothing but hands, you'd think he'd know how to choke Johnny by now, right? Oh, you thought, I see what's going on here. You thought Johnny only wanted you to choke him. No, no. You're one of many. This one's called Pretty Little Thing. First Breath 1. My 5-year-old daughter Isabella ran inside from the creek one morning. She was out of breath and covered in mud. I wanted to scold her for playing by the water. I wanted to get her clean, dressed, and dried for school before the bus came in 20 minutes. But before I could, she held up a piece of bone right in front of my eyes, with a cute smile prepared and a sassy comment already in mind. Look who I met, Daddy. He has a name. I call him Pretty Little Thing. By the size and shape, I could immediately tell that my daughter was holding one half of a human skull. I tried not to panic. That took superhuman strength in and of itself. I took the proper steps to the best of my limited ability and grabbed some paper towels. I slipped a skull gingerly from Izzy's hands and threw it into a plastic grocery bag. Then I called the cops. My daughter didn't like that. In fact, Izzy screamed and shouted over my apparent betrayal for the entirety of the next hour. Trauma and drama aside, I could not figure out the reason behind the tantrum. Isabella had always been a good kid. As a single parent, I thank God for that. My mother often referred to her as Daddy's little girl, and family friends often complimented me for having such a polite child. We never fought as bad as that day, and it was all over my handling over human remains to the police. Weird. Nevertheless, the authorities arrived and took the skull, with gratitude within the hour. They promised to examine the origin and cause of death. A plainclothes detective took me aside during my daughter's interview. He tried to explain the situation calmly. These things happen, he said, more than you would think. There's no reason to be alarmed. Sometimes people's bodies don't pop up for decades. I thanked them and told the detective to contact me only if needed. That was for Izzy's sake. I didn't want my 5-year-old to be forever traumatized by finding the remains of a human being in the backyard. And so she went to school that day. I still went to work. Personally, I was prepared to write the entire situation off as some unfortunate coincidence. A rational explanation would soon be provided by the detectives. In a matter of days or weeks, we could chalk the whole experience up to some unknown cold case from the 50s or something. Maybe we'd be on TV. That night, Isabella talked about Pretty Little Thing at the dinner table. She said she wished he could eat with us. She said she wished I never gave him away. I found those comments to be downright creepy, so I disciplined her by taking away television for a week. Izzy did not take the punishment well. She stomped her little feet upstairs with a pout and looked back that made my heart drop an octave lower. I hated to do it, but something needed to curb that attitude. I went to bed that night with a guilty conscience about Izzy, worry from the skull, and growing anxiety about the approaching storm. The weatherman claimed it would be biblical. Schools and offices had already shut down for the following day. I fell asleep to the first raps of rain against our shutters. I woke sometime later to a particularly loud crack of thunder. It was late. The dim screen of my cell phone read well past 2 in the morning. Immediately, my mind drifted back towards my daughter, and the guilt of the last 24 hours rose to the surface once more. I had not even checked on her before bed. I had been so mad about the fight and the skull and the weird nickname, I neglected to even tuck her in. I convinced myself to get up and check. I battled the nightstand drawer for my glasses. As my feet found the cold wood floor, I heard a faint noise from the hallway, and I wondered if Izzy was feeling some of the same guilt. I waited for her to tumble into my room in a tiny little mess with 1,000 little apologies and requests to sleep in my bed, but the sound of footsteps moved slowly, drifted away from my room and towards her door. I listened closely and began to notice that something about the steps was different. There was no carefree skip and usual dance around the creaky floorboards. I didn't hear the muffled tone of her squeaky little slippers or whispers of Daddy through the door. Instead, I heard a scratching, slow dragging that laced its way down my hallway. Then my daughter's bedroom door opened. The creaking of rustled hinges was unavoidable. Anyone ever attempting to be quiet in my house would ultimately meet their end at the door. A loud, obnoxious whinny filled the air. Then a cold, uncomfortable, deep voice echoed behind it. Ah, pretty little thing. I had a few pretty little things like you once. The threat of another person inside the house kicked my ass into gear. I threw open my own door and darted down the hallway, stubbed my toe on a loose board, and cursed along the way, aspirated. I arrived at the end of the long hall and pushed my way into my daughter's room in a boxer stance, ready to fight. Standing in front of me was one of the most disturbing scenes I had ever seen in my life. My daughter was awake. She stared at me with helplessly wide eyes as a figure sat perched over her bed. I gasped, and the thing turned to me slowly, allowing a full view of its horrible disfigurement of a face in the shadows of the dark. It looked like a man, once, before something tore away half the features. A sickly, pale smile played across half its face. As the being leered in my direction, a hole peeked out from the back of its head. That's a pretty little thing you got there. Looks tasty, too. How old is she now? I backed away a bit. I didn't know what to do. My cell phone and any weapons I kept for self-defense were back in the other room. And even then, I think I knew they wouldn't have done any good. Panic washed over me like a cold wave. I shouted for Isabella to hide and got ready to fight for my daughter's life. Then Iz did something stupidly simple. She turned on the nightlight. Suddenly, the room became awash in a bright blue glow that reached into every dark corner. I shielded my eyes from the strength for a second. When I opened them, the human skeleton sitting on my daughter's bed was gone. It just disappeared. Isabella and I slept in a hotel that night, and every night until I sold the damn place. Look, I know this sounds crazy. Most of you won't believe me. That's fine. I get it. I don't blame you. Everyone has their own crazy ghost encounter, and each sounds as unlikely as the last, so don't worry about it. But one detail did emerge during my attempts to sell the house that convinced me of the authenticity of our shared encounter. The police finally received a DNA match on the skull fragment. It belonged to a John G. Blakey. He owned that particular plot of land in the 40s before it was developed. John developed quite a reputation in his home state. He murdered 10 young girls all around the time of their eighth birthday. He disappeared when the police started to close in. His remains had never been found until now. I don't know what kind of creature attached itself to my daughter. I don't know why it called her pretty little thing. I can only imagine. But what I do know is one thing for sure. We are never going in that goddamn house again. And that concludes the stories for tonight, my friends. So, yep, there's the stories. So, I guess that'll be the end of Murder Monday for this Monday. I'd like to thank y'all for hanging out. Thank y'all for listening to the stories. Thank Nihongo Johnny for providing the stories. And yeah, hope you all have a good night. Hope you all have a good week. I'm sure most of you, I'll talk to you throughout the week anyhow. So, yep, see y'all later. Have a good one. Good night, Haley, if you're still there. Good night, Haley. I love you.